Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the French Property Focus podcast. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Atlantic coast of France. Hula hoops? No, really. And we're going to talk about some different strategies you can try that might make your budget stretch a little further on your French property purchase. I'm going to suggest some research you can do to be better informed that might save you some money and some fees that you can avoid. But first, okay, so we ended up in Biarritz this week. Really lovely town on the Atlantic coast of France. If you've only ever done the Mediterranean side of France and fancy a change, I would highly recommend paying a visit. It has a very different feel. The coastline is a bit more rugged, the water is a little wilder and colder and bigger waves, and that means that there's quite a big surf community. Also, different climate, and because it's that time of year, there are currently hydrangea plants in flower everywhere, all sorts of colours. It's incredible. Now, I'm not a surfer, but I do enjoy watching from a distance and listening to the sound of the waves. Incredibly relaxing. Sunny day, sound of the waves, it was amazing. We enjoyed it so much we decided to stay the night. But it was a bank holiday and last minute, so everything was booked up. So what happened is that we went up the coast a little further north, nearer towards Bordeaux, and found a little town on the beach with a hotel with a room for us. This is where the hula hoops come in. Now after dinner, we went for a walk along the beach and ended up in a bar just as a band started their set. To my surprise, because they didn't look like it, they started off a little bit like a French language Linkin Park. But then they moved quickly to sound a bit more like a ska band. Song 3 started and it was sung in English with a very heavy French accent, You Are My Sunshine. 30 seconds in and all the French locals are dancing. They're loving it. The lead singer walks out into the middle of the dance floor and starts handing out hula hoops to people in the crowd. They immediately take up the challenge. And we're left with 40 middle-aged French women and men hula hooping very badly to the You Are My Sunshine soundtrack. Now, bizarre is a word that works both in French and in English, and it was bizarre. It was amazing. I loved it. What I will say is that when French people get together, they love to enjoy life. You can see it. And I think that's a big reason why people love spending time here. I love finding random places like this in France. It's amazing. Anyway, back to the French property. I said at the start that I was going to try and save you some money, so let's get into it. One thing that might surprise you when you start looking on the websites is that you can find the same property listed with different agents. One thing that might surprise you even more is that sometimes you can find the same property listed with different agents at different prices. Sometimes this happens because the agency fees vary and the seller has just told each agency what they want their net sale proceeds to be, and the agencies just add their fees to get to the list price. Even if you've already viewed with an agency and signed their bon de visite, I would still say to look around to see if you can see it listed somewhere else at a lower price. So just to backtrack a bit, if you're wondering what a bon de visite is, this is a form that you'll need to sign if you view any property with a real estate agent in France. It doesn't mean that you're giving them exclusivity as your agent. You can look with whatever agent you want still. It just means if you go ahead and buy that property, you sign it to say that they introduced that property to you and you agree to pay their fee. So if you've already signed it, why would you still look around somewhere else? Well, if it's listed somewhere else at a lower price, for instance, that lower price is where I would start my negotiation. It's something that the seller and the real estate agent will have to sort out between themselves. But I would start at that lower price if it's of interest to you. The other reason that the price might be different is because the seller has agreed to a price reduction with one agency but hasn't updated the other agencies. It happens all the time, particularly if the property is listed with, say, 4 or 5 different agencies. In that case, if you hadn't looked around and found the lower price, you would definitely be overpaying for it, and you would make an offer based on the wrong information. There's one other scenario here, but I'll come back to that later on. One strategy you've probably used yourselves in the US is that it's more likely that a property is more negotiable the longer it's been on the market. In France, it can be quite difficult to find out when a property was first listed. Often properties get moved between the different aggregator sites every few months. So if you see something and it says it was listed yesterday on that site, it might just mean that it was listed or maybe relisted on that aggregator site yesterday. It might have first been put on the market 2 years earlier. It's very difficult to know. So how can you find out? Well, the most obvious way is you could ask the agent. They'll probably tell you. But if they say it just went on market with them, it doesn't mean that it wasn't already listed with another agency before them. You could still have the thing where it got listed with them this week, but it's been for sale with 3 other agencies for 2 years. Another way that can work is some information in the listing. You might have seen a little graphic in probably every single listing that you've seen that has a rating from A to G, and it's called the DPE. It's one of the mandatory diagnostic reports that's mandated in France, and it has to be available and advertised in the listing before a property can publicly be advertised. Well, so what? Well, it's likely that the date the DPE was done is close to the date the property first went on market with whatever the first agency was. So even if the agencies have changed, it could still be useful. So some websites, if you click through the DPE information, it'll give you the date that the DPE was carried out. Lots don't know. But if you viewed the property, you'll definitely be able to ask for a copy of the DPE, and that should show you the date that the property had the DPE work done on it, and that's probably going to be, most likely, the date the property first went on market. So if you see the DPE is dated from over a year ago versus it was done last week, you're much more likely to be able to negotiate harder on the one from a year ago, just like in the US. If you want to know a little more about what's in the DPE, you can download a free guide we have on our website. I put the link in the description for this podcast. It covers the DPE as well as 4 other numbers you should know when you're buying a French property. It's totally free to download right now. So these are steps you can take to help you in your negotiation once you've found a property that you're interested in. But what else can you do? Well, if you remember earlier, I did say there was another scenario for why you should look around to see if property is listed somewhere else at a lower price. Well, it might be listed by the owner directly. If it's listed by the owner, it might be listed at a lower price because it doesn't include the real estate agent's fees. This is something you see all the time, and it's often why there aren't many exclusive listings, because the owner wants to keep the opportunity to try and sell it themselves. The fees in France for real estate agents can range between about 5% to about 10%. The higher percentage fees are going to be for the lower value properties, with the 5% fees being for the higher end properties. It's French law that real estate agents have to publish their fees on their website. Often it's referred to as the barème. You should be able to either look at it online or download it as a PDF. If you find a property that you're interested in listed by the owner direct and it's the same price as the agency listing, don't worry. You can go to the agency website and look at their barème to work out how much the fee would be and how much the saving could be for you. If you want to then approach the owner directly, and if it's something that is interesting to you after viewing, if I were you, I would just take the fee off of the list price that the owners put it at directly and start your negotiation from that point rather than the higher price, which includes the fees. They might just have put it on to kind of not detract from the agent's list price, because often if you see it listed directly at a lower price with the owner, people do go in and start negotiating with the agency as though there's no fee, and that gets a bit more tricky. What could that look like for you if you were to save on the fee? Well, at around €300,000, you could maybe save 20,000. On €500,000, you could save maybe 30,000, and if your budget's €1,000,000, you might save €50,000. It can make quite a big difference. Some renovations, some extra furniture you want to put in, a pool, new kitchen, whatever. It can be quite a big deal. I get it if you're thinking it sounds too scary. You're in the US and comfortable with the concept of using an agent. I said in one of my other podcasts, though, 40% of all property transactions in France take place without a real estate agent. It's much more common than in the US. You're not on your own if you don't use the agent. You still have to use the notaire. They have to be part of the transaction, and they are totally independent legal experts. So you give your documents and everything to the notaire. It just doesn't go through the real estate agent who pass it on to the notaire. You can ask the notaire questions. He'll go through everything line by line that's in the documents that you sign. He'll still do all the checks that need to be done, the legal checks on the property. You're protected legally in France still with the notaire. You're just not using the agent. If you want to find out some more about how for sale by owner properties work and where to look for them, you can download a free guide from our website. I put the link in the description to this podcast. It's also something that we cover in our online course on how to optimize your French property search, including how you can turn something into a for sale by owner property and save on the fees without actually finding the listing by the owner. Again, I put the link in the description to this podcast so you can find out some more. If you want to save yourself some time and some money, go and check it out. Thanks so much for listening today. I really hope to see you on the next podcast.